The first item on the agenda is the appointment of the chair. Are there any nominations, please?
Yes, thanks. I'm pleased to nominate Mr. Gareth Chapman.
A second.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other nominations for chair? No, I don't think so. Are members in agreement that Mr. Gareth Chapman should be appointed as chairperson for 2025-26? Thank you very much. Then I officially appoint Gareth Chapman as chair of the Governance and Audit Committee for 2025-26. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, and just to say thank you to members of committee for giving me the opportunity to chair for a third year, or it could be the third, I think it is. So, you know, it's a great privilege to chair this committee because I think we have some excellent discussion and dialogue and make real differences for the council. So thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is the election of the vice chair. Stephen's kindly sent out a copy of the procedure note, which hopefully everyone will have seen, and an extract from the Constitution, as you note there, that the vice chair cannot be a member of the cabinet or an assistant to the executive. Hopefully members know my view on this. It's quite perverse that Welsh Government suggests that the appointment of a chair should be an independent member, but the vice chair shouldn't. My view has been and continues to be that actually the vice chair should be an independent member as well, because again there is no political shenanigans could go on. Not saying it would happen, but that the vice chair should be an independent member. So on that basis, do we have nominations for the vice chair? I know Mr. Andrew Bagley has indicated he's willing to continue as vice chair.
I would formally move that.
Richard?
Yes, and I second.
Do I have a seconder then?
I second.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah. Are there any other nominations? Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Martin. Apologies. Are there any other nominations? No? Okay. Mr. Bagley, the vice chair for the next year. All in favour? Oh, anyone against? Say no. If not, that will be carried, I hope, unanimously. Thank you. Good. Right. Okay. I think, as Andrew has said, the meeting is going to be recorded, so the usual requirements comply. And again, as I say, welcome you all to this meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. If you've not seen it already, you'll have a copy of the agenda pack, but it can also be viewed on the council's website. Everyone participating in the meeting will be either attending either in the council chamber or from remote locations. Members attending remotely must keep their cameras on for the duration of the meeting. However, all attendees should keep their microphones off until invited to speak. Members and officers can indicate they want to speak by pressing the hands up icon. And obviously, I'll now proceed to the next items on the absence.
Chair, sorry, can I just indicate that you have a very poor line coming in?
Okay, item order. My apologies. Can you hear me better?
No, it's sort of going in and out, so we don't hear everything you're saying.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Could we
I'm in
suggest
some
you come
difficulty
out
then.
and
I'll see if I can move nearer to the hub. Hang on. Is that Andrew? Stephen?
Thank you, Chair.
Is that any better?
Could I make a suggestion that it is policy that we keep our cameras on, but
Yeah.
however, for you to have your camera on and it all be pixelated, could I suggest with Stephen perhaps that you're allowed to turn your camera off to give the bandwidth to the audio, and then at least we would be able to hear what you're saying. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, that's great. I'll try that now. Is that better?
Yes, Gareth.
Is that any better?
yeah, that seems much better than before.
Oh dear. Okay, can you hear me now then, Simon, Stephen?
Yes, we can hear you now, but you're still going in and out.
Right, I don't know what else I can do. Shall we just move on to the business?
Yeah, I think the sound is good, Gareth. It's just the picture which is not brilliant. I'd try Stephen's suggestion. Stephen needs to work, knock your camera off.
Yeah, is that okay, Gareth? You come out of the meeting, come back in again, and then we can see.
Yeah, I'll do that now.
Okay, is it worth Andrew taking over whilst you're doing that?
Yeah, is that okay?
Andrew?
Yeah, that's fine for me. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we'll carry on that way.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're moving on to the apologies for absence, which is there any noted?
I'm not aware of any apologies for absence for this meeting.
Okay, so for the purpose of the minutes, there will be no absences recorded. Item 4 is the declarations of interest. Councillor Griffiths, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, I will need to leave at 11:30 for a prior engagement. Apologies for that.
That's fine. Thank you for the notification. Councillor Thomas, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Chair. Similar on apologies, I'll need to leave at 1 for work commitments. Thanks.
Okay, noted. Thank you. Okay, item 4 is the declarations of interest. I'm not aware of any that's come through, so if there aren't any further, we will go on to the approval of the minutes. So item 5.
I'll formally move, Andrew.
Great, thank you. And a seconder.
Yeah, second.
Okay, for the purpose of the minutes, we can record that those minutes are approved as a complete and accurate record of the last meeting. And next up then is the item 6, which is the Governance and Audit Committee action record.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on the Governance and Audit Committee's action record. This is attached at Appendix A. The committee is recommended to note the action record and provide any comments as appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, so can I ask if there are any comments from the committee, please? Councillor Hughes, you got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. On page 18.7, it's the arrangement, the consortium arrangement that we have with Denbighshire. It is assuring to see that this gives the partners really good value for money. So I think that was the key interest from this committee on that specific point. But also there was some really useful information supplied to us in the appendix as well. There was a letter that was forwarded with more specific information. I think what would be interesting is to see how, from a fees and revenue point of view, if we could possibly have a matrix which shows the figures for all of the local authorities. Because in terms of parking enforcement, I think what we need to understand is what our standing is compared to the other local authorities in the consortium. I just wonder what other committee members think of that. In terms of parking enforcement, I think we have to strike a balance. We shouldn't be anti-car, and we should be reasonable in our approach. But if it's demonstrated that perhaps we are not doing as much as other authorities and not having as big a return, if you like, in terms of fees that are received, is something that we should be looking at. So I'll just leave it at that, Chair. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
No, that was me.
Oh, sorry. It's because it's come from the main team. I can see Gareth's got his hand up. Is that you, Chair, back online?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. That's loud and clear.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I apologise. So I'll keep my camera off, but at least I'm with you now. It was a similar point I was going to pick up, similar to Martin. I think, and I'm grateful to colleagues on the scrutiny committee in regards to looking at the issue in regards to the Wales Penalty Processing Partnership. The only issue I had with this, and I think Martin's raised some of the points, but the key issue for me is that this, I understand, I stand to be corrected, has not been market tested since the council originally went out to tender on this matter, and that may be over 14 years. So whilst I understand the scrutiny committee considers that they were getting value for money, how do they know if they've not market tested and did that review and monitoring? So I'm just a little bit unclear as to what benchmark they're using in regards to getting value for money. If they've not market tested, is there an opportunity to go back out to the marketplace and actually see, because there are other organisations out there that are doing exactly the same, and it's just getting that certainty that Bridgend are getting the best bang for their buck in reality. Silence.
I think Janine's got her hand up, Chair, to come back in and respond.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, hello, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I'm Janine Nightingale for the purposes of the recording. I'm the Corporate Director for Communities in Bridgend. Apologies, I couldn't attend the last meeting in April. I was off for a couple of months unwell. But there are, if I may, Chair, there are a number of things I'd like to talk about this morning, and that's why myself and Martin Morgans have joined the call. Because I was a little concerned when I saw the minutes that you thought that it was suggested there might be cultural issues, why a number of actions hadn't been undertaken in the Communities Directorate, and I'm here to assure you that is absolutely not the case. But if it's appropriate, is it the right time now to talk about page 17 under point 3? There are 3 things in here that you've asked me to comment back on: home to work mileage, parking enforcement, and the Porthcawl Harbour annual return. Is this the appropriate time in the meeting, Chair, to give you an update on the actions for those 3?
Andrew, do you want me to carry on, or do you want to finish this matter off?
I'm happy for you back now. You're back, Chair.
Yeah. Shall we just deal with the issues that come back from the scrutiny committees in regards to the 2 issues? Janine, if we can deal with those issues first, because obviously I don't think the point you made there about cultural, I don't think they were raised in regards to these very specific issues. They were very specific matters that we considered when we looked at these issues. Firstly was about value. That wasn't a cultural issue in regards to the directorate. Is whether the council was getting value for money in regards to its penalty payment process and whether Denbighshire were providing the right level of service, etc. And as I said, the concern, certainly I think the committee had, was they wanted that reassurance. But the other issue, as I said, I don't think it has been out to re-tendered since 2011. I stand to be correct in that. Would have thought that, to have a contract being extended for now 4 years just needs a little bit of investigation on. If you're getting value for money, great. That's the key issue here, that the citizens of Bridgend are getting the best value they can out of this service. But that was the key issue in regards to the parking, the parking penalty payments. And again, the other issue was in regards to, I would have thought this was also, second point, was also an integral part of the review of the parking strategy as well. So it was just those issues. I think the issues you want to raise are separate because they've not been dealt with as a result of the internal audit reports, given the limited assurances that were given.
Okay, right. So first of all, Chair, I'm slightly confused. We don't have any parking enforcement team. It's done by officers in BCBC.
Yeah.
So, and also, so we don't tender because it's an internalised service. I'm not sure. We did at one stage have G4S and that work for us. We haven't done that for many years. It's internal staff that do that work. And secondly, parking enforcement isn't an generating service. That is not. No. We can't do that.
No.
Because it's not part of the remit. We can only issue parking enforcement where people are parking against the highway regulations. Now, it's strange because in a way, the police deal with dangerous parking, and we deal with people who contravene parking. For instance, if you were saying in a parking spot in a parking ticket. So I think there's possibly a misunderstanding here of what that means for us as a council. So dangerous parking is something that's with by the police. So for instance, if you're parking on a double yellow line, that is something only the police and traffic wardens can enforce. The parking enforcement in BCBC is a slightly lower level, dare I say, and it is where we have people that contravene what we have in place. Now, we have updated our parking enforcement policy. That was completed in May. The duties and responsibilities of that team, and that was what was picked up in the audit. And we do review that every year, and that's done, and that is now in place, so that action is complete. So hopefully that's given you some reassurances there, Chair.
Yeah, we are at cross purposes here then, because this matter relates to, I assume, recouping of the parking tickets that are not paid.
Right, so you're on about taking legal action on fixed penalty notices, are you?
So this is the Wales Penalty Processing Partnership. That's what the specific issue related to in regards to value for money that you were getting from Denbighshire. So the issue you've raised in regards to civil parking enforcement, etc., is completely different. We're not covering that. This was in regards to the Wales Penalty Processing Partnership. The issue was, again, as I said, around value for money, and it's not been tendered, my understanding, since 2011.
Well, that, Chair, is something that I'd have to ask my legal colleagues to comment on, because that's not something that when we undertake legal action, if people aren't paying their FPN, then that is for our legal colleagues to resolve. We get passed over to them. So apologies for that. That would be, I'm afraid, that would be for my legal colleagues. Thank you.
Okay. I'm fair at that. As I said, I understand that, but someone just needs to give an answer. If it's not your directorate, obviously scrutiny's looked at it. They seem to be reasonably satisfied. But it's the issue again about how can you be satisfied when you've got no benchmarking evidence, you've not re-tendered in Bridgend for 14 years to say that it's value for money. So that's the only issue. So that's the only point there, Janine.
Okay, Chair, do you want to give me to give you an update on the other 2 points that are in section 3 of this, or are you happy
Yeah,
that's
the other one, sorry, the other one was in regards to, I don't know whether anyone else has picked the issue up. The other ones was in regards to Porthcawl Harbour, which says following request for an update, scrutiny case considered the information that had been provided from various officers and was satisfied that the topic did not require any further scrutiny and requested that the information be circulated to governance and audit. That issue all related around that members of governance, several members of governance and audit committee didn't understand whatsoever, in my opinion, and this is me pre-saying it, what role Bridgend played in the Porthcawl Harbour. Why did it contribute a significant amount of revenue funding in every year? And actually, what was the structure? So the referral was, and I understand obviously scrutiny are satisfied with it, but some of the elected members didn't understand the structure.
Okay, I can explain that to you.
Yeah,
I think. Go on,
yeah,
please.
I don't think you need to explain the structure to me. The issue was, could someone actually provide to the elected members of the authority and this committee a short paper outlining, the whole structure around Porthcawl Harbour, how it sets how it's structured, how it's set up, why it actually gets contribution funding from Bridgend, County Borough Council, because obviously it doesn't necessarily run at a profit. It runs at a loss year in, year out. And that was the only point. So, with all respect,
Chair, I think there's a misunderstanding here, and it will take me literally 60 seconds to explain this to you.
Yeah.
The terminology is getting mixed up. The harbour and the marina are two different things. The marina is the actual physical marina itself with the boats in place. Okay. And that costs 95,000 a year to run the marina, and we collect 95,000 in fees. The marina itself is cost neutral. So the council does not subsidise the marina. So that's very clear. The harbour, however, is a much wider definition, and it includes all of the harbour defences and the harbour wall and all of the area around it that provides a flood defence for the communities of Porthcawl. Yeah. And now, obviously, we can't expect people who are marina berth holders to pay for the harbour. The harbour itself, because we are the harbour authority, statutory responsibility, and we have harbour bylaws. There's a slipway used by the RNLI or the harbour. Now that, as the harbour authority, we have a statutory duty to maintain all those defences, and that is what the harbour and that is what the council pays towards. So the harbour and the marina are two different things. Harbour being the wider responsibilities of BCBC as a harbour authority, the marina being the water course, the water body where the boats are, and that is cost neutral. So hopefully that explains the difference between the two.
Yeah, thank you for that, Janine. But I think if you could get someone, either yourself or one of your officers, to do a note to explain that, so that when the accounts for Porthcawl Harbour comes to us for approval, that people understand.
Chair, should we put the note at the front of that account that explains that definition? I think that would be very useful.
I think that would be. Yeah, it's
no
just
problem.
that, as I said, some of the elected members didn't understand. So if that's okay.
And that's absolutely fair. It's not an easy thing to distinguish between.
No, exactly.
No,
exactly.
Not a problem. I will ask the team to do that for you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Can I suggest then, are there any other questions on that report or the updates?
Yes, Chair, there's a couple of hands up.
Yeah, sorry, I've got to keep going through my screens. My apologies. Martin Williams, Councillor Martin Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just a clarification, really.
Sorry, Martin, can I just wait? Andrew, would you mind just carrying on a minute? I've got someone knocking at my door a minute. My apologies.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this seems very very small now after that long conversation about other things. But what I would like is just a clarification, possibly partly for me, but maybe for any public who might be watching. It's adjacent to the question regarding enforcement and the collection of fines, and it's something you touched on, Janine. But if we could expand on it, you said that fines are not revenue generation, and I think there might be a view out there that the more we fine, the more we collect, and then we can save money again, and we can use it to subsidise schools. Could you clarify in as short as time as possible how much freedom we have to spend that money as we wish? So if there is a surplus in fine revenue, what restrictions are on this authority in spending that, rather than no restrictions? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. That is a really interesting question, actually, and I'm not entirely clear. I know the answer, and the reason for that is that it costs more to, for instance, if somebody doesn't pay an FPN, a fixed penalty notice, and we take it to court, it costs way more money to collect that fee than it does in penalties that we get repaid back to the council, and that is a real difficult situation for us. So as long as I've been here, I haven't seen any surplus in income as a result of parking enforcement. Now, also, to go back to what I said earlier, it's about ensuring that people are parking safely and correctly and abiding by the rules. It isn't seen as income generation, and it can't be seen as punitive. We're not allowed to issue those FPNs in order to generate money. So whilst I understand, could we use them at the surplus income? Whilst I've been here for the last 6 years, we've never had any surplus income in that regard. And also the law states that we can't do it in a punitive manner to income generate. So I don't know whether that helps you. What I might do is speak to legal colleagues to ask, should we be in a situation where we had an excess, what could we do with that money? So I can ask that question.
Thanks. It helps to a degree, but it's that. But of course, if we haven't been in that situation, then we haven't felt it, if you know what I mean. But it is kind of related to the question. If we were, all right, we're not being punitive, but if we were better, and I don't mean that in a critical way, at getting the money in, and we were more efficient, and again, I don't mean that critically, in our cost of doing it, and we did generate the surplus, would there be any restrictions? And if that requires a paper or something or clarification, that's fine. It's just, that's the question. I know it's slightly hypothetical, but it's the nature of this. It's the nature of this committee.
Yeah, not a problem at all. I don't know how to answer that. I'd need to find out legally where we would stand. I know that where we make a surplus in terms of parking, that it has to stay within the parking budget. So, for instance, if people have a parking fine or they're impounded, it has to stay within that service. And I'm not sure if the same is with parking enforcement. I will ask that, and I will get you a response back to the committee.
That's great, thanks.
Right, thank you. If we could take that away, that'd be fab. Okay, Councillor Davis, I think you've got your hand up next.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of points on item 3. So just to clarify, so I was a bit disappointed with scrutiny's responses, I've got to be honest. I think in particular the parking issue, that could have been looked at in more detail. I don't think it's this committee's responsibility to do that. I think it's scrutiny's committee to do that. I sit on 2 scrutiny committees, so I think I can say that fairly. In terms of the process, as it says, these issues all originated from internal audit recommendation monitoring, and this is why this committee started to talk about it. In terms of the Porthcawl Harbour issue, I for one was confused about the governance. We were given a responsibility to look at it, but I couldn't understand the connection between the council and the authority, the Harbour Authority. Hence why we said, well, can somebody please explain the connections and the responsibilities? I don't think there is a Harbour Authority that actually meets. I may be wrong, but now to my mind, it would be a meeting to look specifically at those issues. It looks like, tell me if I'm wrong again, that the only mechanism is audit, looking at it, and then passing on to us to look at it. That doesn't seem to fit right with me in terms of the council's collective responsibilities. So if somebody could clarify that, I'd be grateful. Then in terms of the home to work mileage in council vehicles, this was raised also on another committee regarding carbon reduction. Again, there was a lack of action. So I understand Janine feeling a little bit hurt around the culture issue, but some of these internal audit recommendations are going back literally years. So that's why the committee focused on these three in particular. I mean, there's others later on in this meeting today. Yeah, just to clarify that. And also, as I say, could somebody just clarify the issues around the process and again, although Janine has indicated there is a connection with the governance, to me, it should be looked at in a bit more detail. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Janine, do you want to come in on any of those items, please?
Yes,
thank you.
Please, if I may, Chair. Just to explain a bit more then about the Harbour Authority. As a local authority, we hold very many responsibilities, and quite a lot of them front-facing sit within my directorate. So we are the statutory Harbour Authority. For instance, the other people who are locally are Cardiff County Council are the statutory Harbour Authority for Cardiff Bay. Just another couple of examples, Chair. I'm the Flood Authority, I'm the Highway Authority. You know, we hold the authority as the Harbour Authority. That's one of our statutory duties. And as such, Councillor, we have a statutory post, which is Harbour Master. And that's Jay. He's a statutory, he has to be in post because we have that harbour area. And we have a harbour board that meets monthly, and all reporting, and in particular through risks, goes through the harbour board. The other thing we have to do statutorily is we have to have harbour bylaws, and that's a really important one as well, and that's all in place. So I appreciate you don't understand the governance. I think possibly we could, I know scrutiny is content because we have discussed this with them. Maybe we can give you a little bit more information and show you how that harbour board, harbour master, the statutory responsibilities are discharged. There's no issue with that. We've never been, you know, that's why scrutiny, I think, are comfortable, because we've never had any issues in terms of discharging our statutory duties as the Harbour Authority. But if you would be comfortable, Chair, I can ask Jay to prepare a paper which just sets out how often we meet, who's on those boards. You can have copies of the minutes if you need them. All of that is in place. And I'm, as the corporate director with the responsibility, statutory responsibility for the Harbour Authority, I'm comfortable that everything is in place. But we can provide you with more information should you need that. So that's the first one. With regard to home to work mileage, we are, and that is for council fleet vehicles. We're not talking about mileage for staff using their own vehicles. It's just home to work mileage. And what came up in the audit is that they wanted to see a more robust procedure in place for that. Now we have a working partnership with South Wales Police. South Wales Police run a joint fleet vehicle maintenance facility with us down at T Thomas. We know we have an active system where we know where every single piece of our fleet is at any given time, and that's because we have trackers on all our vehicles for insurance purposes. So today, if I went down to that depot, I could ask to see live data. Of course, it's GDPR, etc. I could find out where all my vehicles were at any given time. So I do know which vehicles are in the county, what they're doing, and which ones are taken home. Now, what we are ensuring, and what we have always ensured, is that if people take a vehicle home, and there are, I think it's roughly, I think there's 47 officers currently who are authorised to take a vehicle home. And the reason for that is they may be on call, or it may be service efficiency, that the vehicle is better, that the individual starts their working day from home to do maintenance, etc., home care. I'm pretty comfortable with that situation. What we want to do, though, and what the audit has asked, is I'm aware of what that is, and I know today where my vehicles are and where they're going, and there's business cases. What audit have asked us to do is to put together a more robust home to work policy for council vehicles. And as part of our cabinet discussions we've been having on corporate fleet management, they want us to include a policy position within our fleet management review. And that's something that we've commissioned. We're now getting consultants in to assist us with that. And that is a big change for BCBC because we don't have corporate fleet management. Fleet sets of individual departments, and it is something we need to do to bring it all together. Now, there will be some real implications for people who currently operate vehicles for work purposes and take them home if that vehicle is now to be shared corporately. So what would be remiss to do, Chair, would be to bring in a policy ahead of that fleet review, because I need to understand, and you will need to understand, and so the council and trade unions and employees, what that corporate fleet review will mean for people who use council vehicles. So to give you assurances, I'm comfortable with home to work mileage. I know who's doing it. I know that they are. I know live data. I know that they are currently authorised to take that vehicle home, and it's for operational efficiency. We allow that. And Martin Morgans has just joined me in my director as interim head of service, not something that Martin is going back through, just to give a reassurance this year, because it has been about 9 months since we did that first look at this and be comfortable, and he's going to go back through those business cases now to check this year we're still comfortable with the same position. So hopefully that gives you answers on both of those pieces. So Chair, if you'd like to let me know what you want to do about the statutory duties of the Harbour Authority, maybe we could combine that governance paper when we send you the accounts in July. We could explain the difference between Harbour and Marina, set out the governance structure, how often the meetings, and do the accounts, if you thought that would be more appropriate.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Thank you, Janine.
Yeah, thanks for that. So for example, you mentioned the regular meetings. I don't think that was clear in the paperwork we saw, so that would be really helpful. In terms of the home to work mileage issue, I'm not saying we need it straight away, but can we at least have some sort of time scale, even 6 months, a year? Because as I say, it's gone on for a while now, so it's just a time scale. Thank you, Janine.
Okay, yeah. Yes, not a problem. We want to complete this fleet review within this financial year. That's imperative for us, really, because going forward, we want to look if there are any efficiencies or cost savings that come out of it. That's imperative for us. And also, an important bit of this is about our EV transition. That we need to know what fleet we have, how well we use it, and can EV save more efficiencies on our net carbon position. So within 12 months we will have that. Should you what might be useful here, because I want to provide you some reassurances, maybe we could provide a paper for your next committee that sets out what we've done to date on home to work mileage, or are you comfortable with what I've just spoken about this morning?
So I think a paper would be useful, just so we've got a complete picture of what is happening, and it shows that we are actively monitoring it. That'd be great. Thank you, Janine. Gareth, I can see you're back online. So do you want to quickly come back in?
Sorry, I've got someone drilling as well next door, so my apologies. I just endorse completely what you say, Andrew. I think we need a full report on the Harbour Board and the structure, etc. What I was just a little bit concerned about was, and I thank Janine saying the Harbour Board meets monthly or whatever it does. The only question I'd have is, where do those reports or meeting board minutes go? Do they go to the cabinet? Do they go to your committee? Do they go to council? Where do they go? Does anyone actually see them? So that's the first thing. But I think I'd like to pick up the issue around if we can have a full report, certainly on the Harbour Board and the structure. And secondly, whether we can have a full report on this issue around the parking strategy, etc. Home to people using their vehicles outside the normal working day. I'm pleased that you can give us the assurance. Actually, I've got a little bit concerned about whether we have actually got that assurance, because some of these recommendations, as you know, Janine, have been outstanding since 2023. And what, again, I think concerned the committee last time was that you've appointed a consultant now, and I can understand, I think, why, but you've done a fleet review and the parking strategy all to one consultancy. And there was some concern again as to why does the parking strategy need to be lumped in with the fleet review? They're two completely different matters.
That's not correct, Chair.
Okay.
We haven't used the same consultant for both of them. They're two different.
All right. Well, that's what. Sorry, that's what we were told last time. It's gone out to one consultant.
No, I think what. So there's two different things here. So the parking enforcement and parking piece is one thing. That's one side. The corporate fleet review will include a review of a home to work mileage policy in corporate fleet. So, but the reassurances are that currently the current position is we're comfortable with the current practice and what's going on, because we know where the vehicles are and we know there's business cases behind people taking them home. But what has to be done, we have to do a new policy as part of that fleet review, because if we change the way the fleet is managed corporately, it will impact on individuals who take vehicles home, for sure. Because if that, I think it's better I put it in a paper rather than I go into it now. And the reason being, Chair, is we need to have our trade unions and our colleagues in on these discussions. It would be remiss if I had discussions about how vehicles are used and how it impacts on colleagues. This has to be done as part of the corporate review. But just the assurances that we do know where these vehicles are. There are business cases behind all our home to work mileage where people are taking vehicles home. These vehicles are tracked. So there's no issue there. There's reassurances there. But a formalised policy will be part of the corporate fleet review. So that's the one. And then parking and parking enforcement is completely separate.
Yeah, and I understand that. And I think that's where we're getting completely confused here now. So there are three issues, really. There's the harbour, there's the fleet review and use of council vehicles outside the normal working hours, which again, and the third one is the parking strategy, which again, there was a limited assurance from Audit. And I think it's that one that's been outstanding since 2023.
That is now complete, Chair. It was complete in May. The parking enforcement refresh of our policy is done. That's done. And parking enforcement is about residents. It's not about employees.
So that's the parking strategy, is it? Or are we talking two different things?
No, it's not a parking strategy. It's a review of parking enforcement policy was what we have. The duties and responsibilities was where there was limited assurances. So what the team have done is reviewed our parking enforcement policy and that was completed in May. So that those recommendations from that audit are complete. So that one is complete. The questions that have been asked are not about that audit. They're wider about, are we getting value for money from the contract we have on taking people to court with the
we're getting confused now. It was a very specific issue, about the parking strategy that was raised in the limited assurance. Perhaps Andrew can assist me here, and it had been outstanding for some considerable time. The report we had to Bridgen's Governance and Audit Committee last meeting said and stated that the fleet review and the parking strategy was being dealt with by a consultant. And again, that was the issue why obviously you and a colleague was called in, because these limited assurance issues and those statements gave members extreme concern as to why, certainly on the parking strategy, and again, if it's something different and we're talking about something different terminology, I don't know, it was called a parking strategy, why it was gone out to the consultant, why had it taken so long to do or hadn't been completed, and if it how much longer was it going to take? So hopefully that tries to explain the committee's concerns. And I think it's the language which is used, the terminology which is used. And whilst we understand you may have signed it off in May, obviously Andrew will need to comment on that. We've not seen that strategy. I don't know where it's gone. And I think that's what the members of the committee would want that assurance on, because we need to be assured. I understand fully you're assured as the director. We need to be assured as a committee that that matter is being dealt with appropriately. So I think, you know, that's why I think in some respects, oral presentations are marvellous, but once you have it in writing, we can understand, well, I can understand it a lot better, and hopefully, you know, they can be scrutinised a lot better. And I think that's where we need to be. But I don't know, Andrew, was it a parking strategy? I'm sure that's what we were looking at.
Sorry, may I come in? Because I think I have to admit, there wasn't a representative from the Communities Directorate at the last GAC. I wasn't in work, unfortunately. So I think there's been a misinterpretation there. It's not a parking strategy, it's a parking enforcement policy. Parking strategy is a completely different thing, Chair, and we don't have a consultant coming in to write us a parking strategy.
Yeah, okay. I understand that, Janine. I think maybe you ought to look at last month, the last meeting's reports to say where it was being picked up. Andrew, can you assist?
Thanks, Chair. Andrew Wathen, head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. I think what we can do, Chair, to move this forward is that we'll speak to Janine outside of the meeting. We'll clarify the outstanding audit recommendations that were in place previously reported to committee, and we'll make sure that whatever's been addressed within the service area, we can bring back to you as a committee next time round, Chair.
Yeah, and if you can clarify that point, because I'm sure, Andrew, it said a parking strategy.
Yes, Chair, we'll clarify that. I haven't got the papers in front of me at the moment, but we will clarify that and liaise directly with Janine.
Okay, thanks. And again, I think that would be useful if it has been dealt with, let's just have a report to get it signed off. Sorry, I thank you, members, for being extremely patient here. Simon.
Yeah, sorry to go back to the parking issue again. I think that we are in the public domain. We now have stated that we do not follow up parking notices. So if anybody actually does get a fine, these things move very quickly on social media. Nobody's going to be picking up those fines. So I think we're in a difficult situation here that since we've stated we won't follow up with legal action, then people have no reason to pay a fine, and therefore there's no deterrent. I think that there may be an option for us to give these parking notices to a third-party organisation which follows them up, and I think other councils do that. So they don't use their own legal services. They give it to another company who make a business out of following up these fines, and they actually do make a profit, which we obviously don't get that profit, but they do. But at least then it acts as a deterrent. As much as I hate the situation where we have in the UK the nonsense of £400–500 fines as a result of overstays, the reality is that if we don't enforce any of them at all, then it doesn't act as a deterrent. And people will overstay their welcome, or they will park in ridiculous places, taking up disabled people's places and causing traffic mayhem. So I think we should, as part of that parking enforcement strategy, at least consider other ways in which we can push for a deterrent for people to just ignore the rules. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, may I come back in, please?
Yeah, thank you. So I think. Yeah, can I just say, Janine, I think there's been a misinterpretation there. I think
absolutely
enforcement does take place.
Enforce.
That's why Denbighshire undertakes it for. Okay,
yes.
So yeah, so
okay,
so I think
we enforce all
I think the issue
FPNs,
is,
all
I think
fines. We enforce. Thank you.
Simon, I think.
Thank you, Janine, for that clarification. And apologies, I got it wrong, Chair.
It's okay. Obviously, the internal process is the parking wardens, and they the people that issue the tickets. Once again, they go to Denbighshire. And that's the whole issue around value for money is Denbighshire providing it. So that's okay, Simon. Yeah, hopefully people back on social media know saying, oh, we got it all wrong. Well, actually, if they actually picked up, they could all be parked now and they'd all get fined and then we'd be enforced in the parking fines. But there we are. Councillor Easterbrook, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm a little confused. I'm generally confused in these meetings, being a relatively new member. But Janine earlier said that to legally enforce it and take somebody to court to get the money back for that parking fine, the cost of that legals would be more than the actual cost of the fine. So there is no deterrent because we're asking them, please pay it. And if you don't pay it, we'll ask you to please pay it again. So there is no enforcement actually. So there is no incentive for people to pay. That I have a declaration as a town councillor that I'm aware that we had a dignitary in Bridgend who came on the 1st of March, that they parked this dignitary. I can't justify where they've parked, but they had a parking ticket, and it was embarrassing because this dignitary had. So I would advise that somebody needs to pay it. However, I wouldn't like us as an authority to take this dignitary to court. So that's where we're at. So do I go back and say that BCBC won't enforce it? I know we're not saying that. However, I think, again, it's out in the public domain. It's public perception. Going back to work mileage, that when I worked for a company, I was given a vehicle. I had private mileage. They trusted me because I was handling precious metals and gemstones, and they trusted me. I'd like to think that we do trust our staff. My one question is that if I was a coach driver, would I be able to take the coach home? If I was a train driver and I lived near Pyle, maybe I could pull it into a siding or somewhere like that. That I think somebody's place of work, other than when they are working from home, because that is their place of work, but their place of work would be in the depot where their vehicle is kept. And that's when they start, and it's their obligation to start work on time and to leave. I understand that there may be business cases that they may need to take the vehicle home, because if they were going to one extreme of the borough and that's where they live, then on that occasion they would be able to take the vehicle home. But you said that we've got 47 vehicles, that we know where all these vehicles are at all the times and all the private mileage. My one thing is that we've talked about parking. We haven't touched on residential parking, but if I was a BCBC colleague who had one of the larger vehicles and I was to take it home and park it outside my house, or I lived in Sunnyside Road where there is limited parking. However, I see lots of BCBC vehicles being parked in Sunnyside Road, but that's another matter. But I think it is down to, we are in the public eye. And if vehicles with BCBC that are branded, and all our vehicles are branded, then if they are not being used within the 9 to 5:30, unless there's emergency, I think it doesn't look good on us as an authority. So I think that there are many layers. I do trust what you say, Janine, and I do trust our colleagues and think that they work very well for this authority, but we are in the public eye. So I just wanted to make that clear, Chair.
Yeah, Janine, before you come in, before you come in, can I just say, can we just get these reports ready? Because I'm sure that a lot of what you'll write will dispel quite a lot of these issues that have been raised by elected representatives. I think the whole issue around, parking enforcement, etc., can be dealt with in your reports. Taking home vehicles can be dealt with in your report, so that members can see chapter and verse in writing what the process is. And I think, what Councillor Easterbrook made some points there. There is a clear misunderstanding, in my view, from maybe Councillor Easterbrook and maybe other members as to what the processes and the procedures are. And I think until we actually iron all those out in chapter and verse, then we resolve this issue. And I think that's the whole issue, as I said, around the harbour. People don't understand, even though, there is a process which goes through. So I suggest, rather than you come back, because we could be we need been 53 minutes on this one item at the moment, is that we get chapter and verse in a written report, and then we can deal with those very specifically if there are any questions that arise from that then. Okay.
Not a problem.
Because obviously there's a lot of, yeah, go on, sorry.
I do need to come back very quickly on a couple of things, if I may, because this is a recorded meeting. We do enforce.
Yeah.
But I can't comment on individual cases.
No.
So that would be GDPR. I can't comment on that. And then with regard to home to work mileage, we've got thousands and thousands of employees, and there are 47 business cases for staff. Not all staff work 9 to 5. In fact, the majority of staff, especially over the rainfall over this weekend, very, very heavy rainfall. And I had staff working literally around the clock in my highways department. And they're on call, and they do take those vehicles home and they park them responsibly. So the important thing is not everybody, people who work 9 to 5 probably don't need to use a vehicle. In that respect, it is those people who are out and about, who their work is out conducting on highway officers or drainage officers or surveyors, a lot of home care staff as well. They don't normally take council vehicles. So it's a really complex situation, Councillor, but please be assured we don't have BCBC vehicles taken home unless there is a business case to do so. And genuinely, if they are parked there, it's because that officer is on call. They're on call. And if they're on call, they're on call all night long. And they go out and they respond to incidents like they responded last weekend. I had a whole team of incidents. I had something like 45 or 46 reported incidents of flooding all over the borough. And those staff were out all night responding to those incidents all over the borough. Now, we don't have time for them to come back to a depot to collect a vehicle. When you're on call, it's prudent and essential to a first response so that vehicle is with you. So there are business cases behind all of this, and this can all be explained. I want to reassure you, we do not feel this is an issue for BCBC. If we did, it would have been changed years ago. I know where the vehicles are. I know who are driving them. That's not to say that people don't occasionally do things that they're not allowed to do. I can't comment on that now, but where we find out there are instances of this, then we deal with it, and we deal with it robustly. But please be assured, but I can pop all this into a paper. I think if I'm fair, it's probably a misunderstanding of what's going on, as opposed to when I explain it, you will be reassured. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Janine. And I think, I'd like to assure Councillor Easterbrook that Bridgend isn't unique. Every authority have got officers in vehicles on weekends after 5 o'clock because there are emergency situations. So you're not unique. And I think the issue is that hopefully the paper will justify. And if people think, or there's a perception that vehicles are being misused, then they just need to make a formal complaint yourselves and you'll investigate that. And if you've got all the evidence, then obviously you can robustly defend it. So I think those are the issues. Okay, I'm only going to allow one more question, which is from Richard Granville, and then that's it. Because I think you've dealt with, hang on a minute, Richard, I think you've dealt with all the issues on the limited assurances. Janine, I don't think, are there any others we got to pick up? I don't think there are there? No. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, Janine, could you put down Boothcall Harbour, when you're doing the report for Boothcall Harbour, could you enlighten us as a committee what member or cabinet member is sitting on that board? Or if not, Could you just put that down, please, so we are aware of it and everybody else is aware of it, just for clarity? And I would agree with the Chair. Let's move on. We've done this debate now, so I think we should close it and move on.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I think Janine has been through the mill a bit. But I think, you know, it's easier to have it in writing than orally. There's less misconception, you know, and again, people can challenge that. So if we could have those, so I think it's 3 reports next, governance and audit, just to outline the procedures, the backgrounds, the structure, you know, etc. What being discussed, picking up Richard's point, which would be picked up anyway, hopefully in the Harbour report. Look, yeah, this is the board, etc., etc. This is who it reports to. That would be great.
Not a problem. So, are you okay if myself and Martin leave the meeting now, Chair? And we've
yeah, I am. I don't think there's anything else.
Thank you.
Can I just say thank you for staying a distance? And firstly,
no, not at all.
No,
of course, pleasure.
No, it's not a pleasure sometimes. Thank you for certainly coming along and answering the questions. I think it's been a very long session, and I think you've provided a lot of information, and I think hopefully you've got some clarity. Will hopefully assist us going forward, and then obviously if they need to go back to the scrutiny committee, then we'll refer them back to scrutiny in due course. So thank you, Janine, and thank you to your colleague who attended as well.
Thank you.
Can I just say that we obviously note the governance and action record, that's recommendation 1, and number 2, that we await the reports from the director on the Harbour Board, the parking strategy, home to use of council vehicles and their mileage, and await those reports at the next committee. So if someone could move, please.
I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Can I have a seconder?
Yeah, second.
Anyone against? No. Okay, thank you. Next one is item 7, the going concern assessment. I think that's Nigel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning. For the recording, Nigel Smith, Group Manager, Chief Accountant. The purpose of this report is to bring to this committee our assessment of the Council as a going concern. There is a presumption as a statutory body that we will continue to deliver our services moving forward, and that is what the basis of the going concern assumption is. Our annual accounts, which we will bring to the next committee, are prepared on the basis of that assumption. And what this report does, it sets out some of the financial information, the governance arrangements and regulatory and control framework information that underpins that assessment. The detail is in the report, so I'll take members to the recommendation, which is that the Governance and Audit Committee accepts the outcome of the assessment of the going concern status. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nigel. Are there any questions? No questions. Oh, Councillor Griffiths. You're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted clarification actually on the overall underspend. I think that what it says is that for the financial year that's just finished, that we are likely to finish with a slight underspend. Is that absolutely the case? Because I thought we were still in an overspend situation.
Nigel.
Do you want me to come in on that, Chair? Sorry.
Yeah, Gareth.
Sorry, Gareth. We are reporting our outturn position to Cabinet next Tuesday. So that report is there. There's a lot of detail in that report. I'd welcome members going through it in detail, really. Our position did change at the end of the financial year, predominantly due to Welsh Government monies coming in during the final quarter. So we are reporting that both to Cabinet and actually into Council next week.
Okay, so we get a preview of good news. That sounds. Thank you very much, Gareth.
That's okay. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick one. Does the going concern statement take into account, off the books liability? So, for example, school deficits, are they reflected in there? Because at some point, I think we had last year a discussion about school deficits, and if school is ultimately unable to meet those deficits themselves, then it will at some point come back on the authority. Does it take into account those slightly left field or slightly off the books liabilities? Thanks.
Thanks, Martin.
Hi, good question. Yes, we do take into account the school balances, and those are incorporated into the statement of accounts, which we will present to you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity, Nigel. Any other comments? I'll just go quickly through my screens. No other questions? Any comments? No. Okay, go members to the recommendation that we accept the outcome of the assessment of the council's going concern status for the purpose of preparing 24-25 statement accounts. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll move.
Yes, I
Thank
second.
you, Richard. Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Next item on the report is the Audit Wales audit inquiries to those charged with governance and management for 24-25 audit.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That's me again. Again, this is a report that is brought to this committee on an annual basis as part of the preparation for the statement of accounts, and is an audit letter that Audit Wales provide to those charged with governance to complete. You'll see in the appendix that the last year's responses are included along with this year's updates to those responses, and any changes are noted. The detail again is in the appendix. So I would take the committee to the recommendations to agree the responses to the letter, and note that the Audit Wales inquiries letter will be subject to final review and approval before we send it off to Audit Wales by the end of this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Any questions for anyone? Oh, hang on. Someone's got a question. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just two specific questions. The first one is on page 34, item 4, where there's looks to be a tremendous amount of work required to bring in the new asset arrangement system. If you could have an indication of how much work that will involve, and just a likely timescale for that work being completed. And then on page 37, there's a report of we've been the subject of some fraud with the purchase of a shipping container, where half of the value had already been paid in advance. It's obviously been picked up, and if we could just have a bit more information about that, to see if it is possible to recoup those losses. And also to ask how that purchase was made, whether it's done through the usual back system, or if indeed if it's done by a company credit card, if there's any possibility of being able to reclaim that loss through the credit card company. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Martin.
If I take the second one first, the fraud, it was done through our normal system. Unfortunately, it was put through as a payment in advance. My understanding is that there has been attempts to make contact with the company and recover that money, but I'm not sure that has been possible, unfortunately. Thankfully, it was a small amount, relatively, although we don't want to lose any money in that way, and hopefully an isolated case. That's the only isolated case that we're aware of. In terms of the new asset management system, I anticipate, I'm not involved directly, it would be colleagues within our property section. I anticipate it would be quite a significant system, and that's what we've included in the response, that we're hoping to look at that over the next forthcoming year, but it's not something that I don't think would be a quick solution.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Just two questions on the ones Martin picked up just for me. Has the asset management system been costed out in the forward budget for either this year or next year? So is there revenue monies in there to support the asset management system? And secondly, you may not know, why does the council purchase shipping containers?
Hi, Chair. If you want, I can answer the first part of that. Deborah Exton, Deputy Head of Finance. So in terms of the asset management system, there is some funding that has been set aside in our digital transformation earmark reserve for this system. Obviously, it will need reviewing once the corporate landlord team determine which system they need to go forward with. But this has been set aside for that particular purpose. So obviously, we'll have to review that when we know what the likely system will be and what the cost will be.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you for that. And how about the shipping container?
Yeah, don't think we can answer that one, unfortunately. Sorry.
Okay. Can someone find out why you buy shipping containers? For what purpose do the council use them?
Chair.
Colin, you buy them.
Yeah, I can give you an example from my previous job working with the Vale, and I had a shipping container at the back of the office simply to look after all the bikes we'd use to work with young people. So it's that kind of thing, outdoor equipment, bikes, etc. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Thank you, Colin, for that. But if we could find out why the council purchased them, that would be very useful. Colin, you've got another, you had your hand up for a question?
Yeah, more comments really, Chair.
Well, can you just wait for the questions then?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thanks. Bayadin?
Yeah, thank you. On the container issue, I think the commentary there on the page 38 says that the approval of the section 151 officer is gotten before payments are made in advance. But I'm a bit concerned actually how it's worded. Are we saying that in this instance that did not happen? Is that the basis for the fraud?
Yeah, thanks, Bayadin. Nigel?
Yes, in this instance, that was the case, unfortunately.
Is that okay, Bayadin? It was the case.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
And if I may ask, right, if that happened, so were there disciplinary measures for breach of process and policy?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Do you want to can you repeat, please?
Nigel, is about breach of process. Bayadin was picking up. So should whoever purchased, I would have thought the container had, gone through that process before and assured themselves before they bought it that the 151 had signed it off. I think that's the point, Bayadin.
Yes, that's fine. Yes, and that is within our financial procedures that we should have any payments in advance are approved prior to them being taken forward.
Right. So has the officer been? Sorry, go on, Bayadin.
Yeah, I think you have actually get there. So the point really is that, so what then happened if there is actually a breaching procedure? What's happened next? Because it should be in the report as well. If that's what we are saying.
Yeah.
We obviously need to look into this issue in detail. If there has been a breach of procedure, then we will take due action, and depending on the level and the seriousness of that breach, then obviously we will speak to the relevant officer plus their manager to ensure that that doesn't happen again and that they are aware of the requirements to request authorisation for payment in advance.
Yeah, thank you for that, Caris. I think that assurance is essential for Bayadin's question. It's whether or not internal audit should go in and just have a little look. Hopefully it's not symptomatic in the directorate or wherever, but if it's a one-off, then so be it. But hopefully it's not consistent throughout the directorate. Other questions? Sorry, I just checked a minute. Colin, you're on for a question?
Yeah, it's a comment and a question really. So page 39 regarding item 3, management's process for identifying and responding to the risks of fraud. It's good to hear that generally it's not possible for an individual officer to act alone. I think that's probably the best yardstick in terms of preventing any fraud. So it's good to see that's in place. And then on page 40, number 6, I just wondered what kind of training is probably a bit too much on this, but what kind of awareness raising do we do for all staff? You know, is it part of the induction? Are there regular reminders? You know, that kind of thing. And you know, I presume there's something like I know it discourages any kind of hospitality, but sometimes it's rude to turn down a cup of coffee from somebody, a partner you're working with. And some local authorities go to the extent of even having a hospitality register and a pro forma every officer needs to complete when they're offered a cup of tea or coffee or even a bottle of wine. So I just wondered if those things are in place. Thank you.
We do have e-learning available to all staff on fraud. Whilst it's not mandatory, it is available there, and those staff involved in regular use of handling of cash, etc., should refresh the training on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was asked to repeat. We do have an e-fraud learning module, which is available to all staff on the intranet. So those sort of, whilst it's not mandatory for all staff, not all staff, I suppose, will be involved in any financial transactions. Those that are should regularly refresh their knowledge through that e-learning module.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Could I suggest, given that this has been highlighted, is it worth just doing an email to all staff to say, can you refresh? Is that okay? Caris, would that be possible?
Yeah. Right. Apparently we have recently sent something out, Chair, for all staff. And I think there is something, we've got a couple of policies coming through later on this morning, and it's gone through my mind that we need to make sure once they then go to Cabinet that we put something out to staff as well to remind them of how important it is that we adhere to all these things and that relevant staff do access that training. So we will follow that up, Chair.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Caris. And I think also needs to be pointed out there's a consequence of not following it as well. Thank you, Caris. Councillor Martin Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, back to this shipping container, and it's perhaps not the container in and of itself, and perhaps not even the money that may be lost through it, but I'm like to understand how we are purchasing things in a way that exposes us like this, because I would have thought that the majority of procurement are through agreements. Or with agreements whereby we don't pay anything in advance. It's all it's all paid. We in fact we sit on their money when we pay on 30 days or what have you, or would there be or they'd be approved suppliers with rules and governance around that. So again, maybe I don't need an answer now, but I would like to understand how it is possible for an officer to just decide to buy something and then buy it in this way. And again, I don't want to be overly critical. It might be a training thing rather than done out of malice. But I thought in this day and age it would be very difficult to make this sort of purchase in an organisation like ours. And I think we just need to assure ourselves that if there is a bit of a loose thread there, that is tied up very quickly. Thanks.
Thanks, Martin. Caris?
Yeah, I mean, we need to look at the details behind this. As I've said, there are procedures in place. We've already determined they didn't follow all of the financial procedure rules. There are normally checks and balances in place within our system. So, one person can't order and pay for the same goods. We have those checks and balances in, just as Councillor Davies has highlighted a couple of minutes ago. We will look at this one to find out what's happened, and if we feel that it's a one-off, it's a one-off. If we feel that there's something more systemic in here or something that we need to look again at our policies and procedures, then obviously we will take that action.
Yeah, thank you for that assurance. Caris, I would hope Councillor Williams is assured by that. Unfortunately, these things happen. Doesn't matter what systems you've got in place, they do happen. But I think, as you said earlier, to look at this matter in isolation and then deal with it accordingly is important. But if it's systemic, then again, there's another issue that needs to be addressed. So thank you for that assurance, Caris. Any other questions? I don't think there. Oh, Richard,
Thank you, Chair. Just for information, really, there are three new brand new porta cabins in Boothcall on the car park for startup businesses. Now, I don't know if this is related to that, right? I don't know, but yeah, they are shipping containers. They've done is they've done them out in different wood for people to start a business. Just for information, that was, Chair, for officers, just to, perhaps so they could track it down that way. Yeah, thanks, Richard. Rather than protract this, let's get the officers to have a look at it, and then they can come back to us. And I think that's essential. Find out what's happened. Councillor Easterbrook.
Yeah, Councillor Granville have actually stolen my thunder there. That I was going to say that it's very much on the BCBC website and our social media that we are bringing attention to shipping containers. And this again is a bit embarrassing for us that as an authority that this will pop up. Hopefully not on the BCBC website, but I'm very sure that it's a public meeting and this will be highlighted to residents on Facebook. We need to be a lot more careful in the way that we're doing things.
Yeah, I think the officers will take that on board. I think the issue you've got to, I think most people are saying we're a multi-million-pound business, a council. Sometimes these odd things happen, but Caris, I think, has given us the assurance that they will be fully investigated. Now it's been brought to their attention. I'm sure they were going to investigate it before it came to us anyway. If there are no other questions, any comments? No, there's no comments. If we go to the recommendations then, firstly, that we agree the response to the Audit Wales audit inquiries to those charged with governance and management letter as attached to Appendix A, and that we note the responses to Audit Wales inquiries letter will be subject to final review and approval of the Section 151 officer and monitoring officer and may be subject to revision prior to submission. Someone move, please. I'll formally move, Chair. Thank you, Richard. Can I have a seconder?
Yeah, second.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. The next one is the annual internal audit report 24-25.
Thank you, Chair. It's Andrew Wathen, head of the regional internal audit service, and yes, this is the annual internal audit report for 24-25. Outlines what work we've undertaken in 24-25 as an audit team to give you, as a governance and audit committee, the assurances that you need to in relation to the governance, risk management and internal control arrangements we have within the organisation. So it talks about the work we've covered and it talks about the performance of the team. It's a very positive report in that we've covered 89% of our plan against a target of 80%, and our opinions which we've issued are positive. 91% are either substantial or reasonable. So that kind of sets the scene, really, Chair, for where we were with 24-25. There's quite a lot of detail in the report, so I'll just pick up the salient points if I could and talk my way through the actual report, Chair. So there's a bit of background in terms of why we've got to comply with this annual report in relation to the public sector internal audit standards for 24-25 and the reasons why we have to report into you as a governance and audit committee. We talk about the opinions which we issue, and there's a definition of what opinions we've actually used within the organisation. Table 2, page 61, outlines the number of opinions which we've issued, which comes to the 91% substantial and reasonable, and we'll split that over the various systems and audits which we've undertaken. We've included a graph at figure 1, just so that you can see quite clearly it's more positive than negative in terms of the opinions which we have issued. Table 3, we've done a comparison year on year to show that there has been improvement over the years, and the number of reasonables has increased. The number of substantials is there or thereabouts, but the number of limiteds has been reduced, which is reassuring. In terms of completion of the plan, that's set out in Table 4, which is page 60, top of page 63 of your pack. We've issued 43 reports, 42 were finalised, one was in draft at year end, 31st of March. And that shows we've issued overall 89% of our completed plan. There will be some work which we've covered which is non-opinion related, and that's covered in the detail within the appendix. Limited reports, Chair, they've been brought to your attention previously, so that's just an overview of why we felt they were limited at that particular time. And with limited reports, we will go back and we'll do a follow-up review. Hopefully the recommendations have been implemented, and we will report back the revised opinion accordingly back into committee. Also reassuring that where we have followed up limited reports previously, 3 have had a increased opinion, so it's moved from limited to reasonable, and we're due to follow up in a further 3 limited opinions in 25-26, which is part of our planning process for 25-26. In terms of recommendations, we've issued 225 recommendations over the number of reports that we've issued. And again, a positive message, only 5% were high recommendations, 95% were either medium or low, which puts the authority in a very good position. Touched on kind of fraud work and the NFI, and we certainly liaise with Simon, the fraud officer, on a regular basis, and we have a good relationship with Simon, and he will report his annual fraud report later to committee in the year. When we complete our audits, we send out a post-audit questionnaire to all our auditees, all the operational managers, and we ask them to complete the questionnaire and return it back to us. This helps in terms of our development and providing a better service across the board. So in Bridgend, we had a 67% return rate, a significant increase on the previous year, which was 46%, an overall satisfaction rate of 95%. So we asked the auditees how they felt the audit went. Was it conducted in a professional way, and was it meaningful in terms of the output? So the feedback we've had is very positive. I've also incorporated some comments there, Chair, just to give you a flavour of what we get back. I would encourage positive and negative comments, because we can always learn from the negative comments, and always happy to develop the service to provide an even more efficient and effective internal audit service moving forward. As a professional team, we want to be as qualified as we possibly can. We have staff within the team who are fully qualified, either CIPFA or IIA, which is the internal audit path. And encouragingly, we have 2 graduate auditors doing CIPFA, and 4 further staff have undertaken IIA in 24-25 and have all passed their first exam, which is really positive. And as a management team, we'll continue to support CPD, and there's a few training sessions there, which just to give you a flavour of what the team have been involved with this year. The section then on public sector internal standards, to say that we are compliant in 24-25, and we have been in terms of our self-assessment and our external assessment. Section 10 on page 69 goes on to talk about the global internal audit standards, which you're now well aware of comes into play for 25-26. So there's a bit of background there. Essentially, we were compliant with the previous standards. I'm pretty confident that we'll be compliant with the new standards moving forward, Chair. The last section is just a bit of background about the regional internal audit service, how we operate and how we look to operate in the future, which all accumulates into my annual opinion in terms of the risk management, governance arrangement and internal control. As you can see on page 73, I've given those all a reasonable assurance, which then leads up to an overall assurance for the authority in terms of internal control, governance and risk management processes which were in place and what we audited across all services for 24-25, which was a reasonable assurance. The appendix then, which are included, the annex then attached, Chair, are a list of the opinions which we've issued and the number of recommendations accordingly. Where we were against the audit plan, any outstanding jobs would have been carried forward into the 25-26 plan. Status of the recommendations that we've issued as part of our finalised reports, and lastly, a copy of the questionnaire which we sent out to our auditees. So, Chair, that concludes the presentation for me. So if I could take members back to the recommendation, is that Governance and Audit Committee are asked to consider and note the annual internal audit report for 24-25, including the Head of Internal Audit's annual audit opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of the controls framework, governance, risk management and internal control. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the comprehensive report, and thank your team for the work they've done during the last financial year. Greatly appreciated. So we'll come to questions first, and Councillor Richard Granville first. Richard?
Thank you, Chair. I'm reading a literature here of things that are going on. It seems in schools, Penabont Primary School, it seems that that's, I don't know where they are, but worse than that, it's my stake school. Once again, it's schools we're having problems with. When you read this, you think, what is going on? So I don't know, Chair, do we now get the director back in here and ask him to give us an overview of exactly what he's putting in place to sort these problems out with the two schools? Or do we deal with it as an audit committee here and make recommendations? You're in the chair, I'll go with what you wish you want to do. But reading this is terrible. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Richard, I went out then. I think if there are issues outstanding in regards to schools, then my view is that we should seek some reassurance from the director in regards to what he's doing. So it may well be as a result of the recommendation tonight. Obviously, we're dealing with Andrew's annual report, but we again ask for the director to provide us with a report in regards to these matters.
Chair, can I come in here?
Yeah.
So in terms of the limited opinions, we've got a process in place where we issue an audit opinion, and that could be one of 4 opinions. And then if it's a limited audit opinion, we obviously discuss that with the service manager, in this case the head teacher. They've got an opportunity to put things right. So then we would arrange to do a follow-up audit in due course. So with these 2 schools, we've arranged to do a follow-up audit in 25-26. It's part of our audit plan for 25-26. And then we would report back accordingly. So if the opinions had consecutive negative opinions, then I would agree, yes, let's bring the either the operational manager or the director into committee to ask why there's been no improvement. If you could just be with us this time round to make sure we can do our follow-up in a timely manner, come back to you with the revised opinion, I think that would put us in a better position to give you the assurance that things have been addressed following the audit. Some of these schools haven't been audited for a while. We try and do them on a cyclical basis, but we do get a very good response from the head teachers in terms of our action plans. So my stake in particular, we've had a very positive feedback from the head teacher, and most of the concerns we identified have already been implemented, and she's keen for us to go back and audit as soon as possible. So hopefully the opinion will improve when we go back and we do a follow-up. We have got about 40 to 50 schools within Bridgend, so it's a snapshot. We can't do them all in 1 year, and we try and do them on a cyclical basis. But what we also issue is what we call a control risk self-assessment to all schools. So it gives the schools a heads up in terms of if they're not being audited in that particular year, it gives the head teacher and the chair of governors an opportunity to work through what we would look at when we would do an audit. So it kind of gives them an indication of what controls should be in place across a range of key systems which are operated within the school. And we do that on an annual basis, and we get a fairly good return rate. So in terms of the challenge, I guess, Chair, if you could just be with us this time round in terms of allowing us to do a follow-up audit, reporting back, and if the opinion has not improved, then we can take it forward from there.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. I think that's reasonable. But Richard, you happy with that?
Well, yes or no, Chair. There are serious implications here, right, that the head teacher of my stake school has gone around, like the governing body for a start, right? They're elected and they're not knowing what's going on. I know what the audit people are saying, right? But I still say we stuck to our guns with the last one. We had the director in again, didn't we, right? And I think we should for this one. I know it could be run parallel here, right? They can do what they want to do, but I still think we should have the director in and ask him straight questions here. What is going on with these schools? You know what I mean? If the governing body doesn't know what's going on, then there's serious consequences for this council. Because if somebody makes a formal complaint, it goes viral then, right? And then we've got no control of it. And I think we should take control of it now before it goes that far. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you, Richard. Andrew, I hear what you say. I think picking up Richard's point, it may be worth sort of double tracking this. So if we can get the director to do a report on these schools which are outstanding, to update us as what he's doing, then obviously your report will either assist him or actually it'll satisfy him that the matters have been dealt with appropriately. But I understand Richard's concerns. So it may be, I think that we recommend that the director provides us a report in regards to the schools you mentioned, Richard, if you're happy with that.
I'll go along with what you just said, Chair.
Thank you. Biden?
Yeah, thank you. Just to check on table 4, which is in page 63 of the report. It's not adding up actually, in my view. So maybe something that the team should check. Because I'm seeing 50% representing 86%, and I'm seeing 63 representing 89%. So it seems something is wrong with the report. So I just think they should just check it out. Thank you.
Andrew, can you check that or clarify that?
Yeah, Chair, the figures are correct. Not all the figures in the middle column are used to calculate the percentages. In terms of percentage completed, we take into account the finalised figure, which is the 42, and any opinions which have been issued a draft as at 31st of March, which is the 1. So you've got 42 plus 1 equates to the 86%. And then we've got non-opinion added into that as well, which equals the 89%. I'll take on board the point, Chair, and we'll re-clarify the table moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew, for that. Thank you, Biden, for the question. Martin?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's pleasing to see that the new partnership arrangement with just the 3 partners now is working well after RCT left the stage. There's obviously been some significant changes made in terms of the organisation of our internal audit service. What I would like to ask is if there's been any consequential increase in the cost of overheads, because there are less partners in any consortium, then there are these consequences. It's basically to see how we are progressing in terms of the cost of the service.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Martin. Andrew?
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. Obviously, the costs of RCT have moved with RCT. So the overheads generally are marginal. The 93% of our costs are staff related. So anything else is kind of marginal, really. We did have myself, 2 audit managers dealing with 4 organisations. We now have myself and 1 audit manager dealing with 3 organisations. So we've had to spread our workload a bit thinner. But the costs are still the same for myself and for Joan in terms of management. And we have 2 assistant audit managers working with us. And we try and keep the team geographically based as best we can, so we don't move them around for the sake of it. But like I say, the overhead costs generally are quite marginal. But we do certainly keep an eye on it and make sure that that's reported into the board, which consists of the 3 Section 151 officers, who obviously are very au fait with the finances side of things.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrew. Martin, the only comment I can make, given I sit on the Governance and Audit Committee, which Andrew provides a service to, their satisfaction rate is excellent, and the number of audits they've done during the year has exceeded their target, which they've done here. So I think in regards to value for money, I would hope that you know, the 151s of the authority consider that we as an authority are getting you know, good value for money. I think the only issue we got is again, it's a great shame that people leave the consortia where actually we should be building the consortia, because you know, government keeps going on about wastage and doge and all this and that. But no, for each authority to have its own internal audit service and actually not collaborate, I think is a backward step. But that's my opinion, not anyone else's. Sorry, Martin, did you want to come back?
No, I think it's all credit to the staff, actually, that they've
Yes.
you know, hunkered down, done a really good job.
Exactly. I think it's down to Andrew and his team. So I think, you know, thanks very much for that. Colin.
Thanks, yeah, and continuing our vein, really, I think is a great report and reflecting great performance. So I just want to congratulate Andrew and the team, really good. I particularly like the stats on page 66 in terms of the return rate and the satisfaction. That was really good. When you look at our staff survey, for example, you know, we were in the 20s, so you've got a really good response rate and a really positive outcome. My question is really, in terms of, Gareth, your last point there, in terms of boosting the service and promoting it, you know, are there any UK or Welsh awards that we can nominate this team for, local government or audit? Because I think we should do that just as a matter of course, but also as a way of promoting the idea of shared services, because it is a future. It does make sense, generally give the service a boost. Thanks, Chair.
Sorry, Colin, I did get that. There are local government awards, and perhaps I don't want to give Caris even any more to do because he does enough. But you know, maybe we ought to explore some of the local government chronicle awards or some of the SIPFA awards, or you know, I know, you know, self-recommendation isn't always good, but it's the people in the professional field who know where these awards are coming from. And, you know, I think if the committee were to support that, then I'd be up for putting a recommendation in. Caris, you're poised there.
No, I'm quite happy actually to take that comment back and to the overall board that Andrew's already mentioned. There are local government chronicles, and the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy also do annual awards as well. We're not usually one to chase for awards, to be honest with you. It doesn't come with finance comfortably, but we're not very good at self-promotion. But I think the report does justify us doing that, actually. So I'm quite happy to take it back to the shared board that we've got and suggest to colleagues that we maybe do look at some of that for the coming year. Yeah.
Thank you, Caris. Thank you for that. Councillor Thomas.
Diolch, Chair. Many thanks. Just quickly on limited assurance, notwithstanding Councillor Granville's concerns, I actually think that the report in front of us today proves and demonstrates the value and the purpose of the internal audit process, and that these issues are picked up. I guess using your words from earlier in the meeting, Chair, these issues unfortunately can do and will occur irrespective of checks and balances in place. But the important thing is from this report is that they've been identified, they've been recorded, recommendations have been made. In the particular instance of my stake school, for example, I'm encouraged to hear from Andrew that the head teacher is willing internal audit back to undertake a further audit process, that the recommendations are in place. So, okay, there are more than a couple of issues there, but I think it proves and demonstrates the value and the worth of the process. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Councillor Thomas. I think you know, I think we all on the committee agree with them. You know, that's why internal audit are there. They shouldn't be seen as the bad boys. They should actually be seen as a way of you know, continuous improvement and identifying those weaknesses or areas for improvement. So thank you very much for your comments. I don't think there's any other. Just check. No. Are there any comments now? I've only got, and I don't want to keep raking over it. On Appendix 3, obviously, we've got all the audits that you carried out, Andrew. And I was just checking my mental capacity in regards to what Janine presented to us earlier. But I think in regards to the two issues, and again, I've looked them up, in regards to parking enforcement, the agreed action was the existing Bridgend County Borough Council parking strategy was produced in 2014 and refreshed in 2017. And the update we had back in the last committee was that duties and responsibilities updated in annual report form are currently being produced, complete, just awaiting financial information expected within the next few weeks. So that's where Janine, I think, needs to pick up that issue, because obviously it was the parking strategy that was mentioned. And in regards to the harbour, and again, we had a lot of discussion about harbour, but it's interesting for me that obviously Janine made the point that meetings take place monthly, etc., etc. But what we were told at the last meeting in update for November 24, and I'll read it out. It says a proposal for an updated engagement strategy was presented to the October 24 board meeting. The proposed change is to have 2 meetings a year instead of just 1. So that's the board meeting. So whether she's confusing it with something else, I've got no idea. And for those meetings to occur in March and October, this will allow the accounts to be signed off in time for the year end. Agreed in principle, ratification will occur via email in the coming weeks. Updated business plan is still being progressed and will be circulated, reviewed and agreed by the end of the year. So that was probably the end of the last year. So I don't know whether we've had that. But the only point I would make is I think Janine needs to be pointed to these documents that we're provided as a committee, because that's what we act upon. And then in oral communicate, we get a completely different view. So Gareth, if you could point that out to Janine, is that we're just picking up what we're being told, and presumably what we're being told by the directorate.
I will pick that up, Chair, and I've kind of made a mental note that we need to liaise with internal audit on those outstanding issues for all of us to be absolutely clear what is outstanding, what work has been done, and whether or not there are still any gaps. So I will take that forward with Andrew and Joan.
Yeah, thank you for that, because otherwise we as a committee, obviously, as I said, it's okay for, and I don't mean this unkind, it's okay for a director to give us assurances when in written format something completely different is said. So we just need to get those in checks and balances correct. Councillor Martin Williams, comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, apologies, my laptop's had a meltdown. I don't know quite what's happened. But going back to Porthcawl Harbour, I think you're quite right. I completely agree with you. We only audit what's put in front of us, and of course, the papers and the annual return were put in front of us. But Janine, said that the harbour's an authority, and she's also the highway authority, and a couple of other authority, the flood authority. But they don't present an annual return, do they? So whilst I guess she's right that this authority does have sub authorities within it. There is something different about Porthcawl Harbour, isn't it? Otherwise, why would there be an annual return? So I'm still not quite satisfied that we've got to the bottom of what's going on with it all.
Exactly, and I'm with you there, and I think that's where the confusion is. If you as elected members on governance and audit don't understand it, how many other council members don't understand it either? And that's why we need this paper. Her responsibility is highway authority, her responsibility is flood risk, or picked up within the normal council accounts, would be my view, because they are statutory. But this is a very specific issue. It's got a harbour board. It's most probably constructed out of some harbour legislation. So I think we need to understand it to get that assurance. I know you have been concerned over the past couple of years in regards to it, and I think we all need to get that assurance and have that report so we understand fully what it's about. And if we don't, we're allowed to question it. Okay, any other comments? No, if there are no comments, if we go to the recommendation then that we're asked to note the annual internal audit report for 24-25 financial year, including the head of internal audit's annual opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of the council framework of governance, risk management and internal control. And there needs to be a 9.2 that the Director of Education provides a written report in regards to the outstanding recommendations, the internal audit recommendations to the next committee as to what action is being taken.
I would formally move that with the amendment.
Thank you, Richard. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone against? No, thank you. That's carried. We've got the, where are we now? Internal audit strategy, risk-based plan 25-26.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's myself. So good morning. I'm Joan Davis, the Deputy Head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. The purpose of this report is to provide members of the Governance and Audit Committee with an annual internal audit strategy and risk-based plan for 25-26 for approval. The proposed Regional Internal Audit Service audit strategy is at Appendix A. The strategy demonstrates in detail how the Internal Audit Service will be delivered in accordance with our terms of reference, which is reviewed annually. This includes the methodology used to develop the internal audit annual plan and the approach taken when undertaking audits. The strategy also includes the definition of internal audit as per the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards, which has now been replaced by the Global Internal Audit Standards, the Section 151 Officer Responsibility, and the information to be provided to this committee. The Global Internal Audit Standards require a risk-based annual plan to be produced to cover the Council's overall control environment, including risk, governance, and internal controls as far as practical. The proposed annual risk-based plan for 25-26 is therefore Appendix B. This plan has been compiled following various discussions and information that's been gathered and received from chief officers by reviewing the Corporate Risk Register, the corporate plan and previous audits. It also includes the 7 audits that were ongoing or not started during 24-25. The plan provides this committee with an overview of the work to be undertaken, which will offer sufficient coverage to enable the head of internal audit to be able to provide an opinion at the end of 25-26. The proposed annual plan is flexible to allow for changing circumstances and events that may occur, such as requests to respond to new issues that may emerge during the year. The Governance and Audit Committee will receive updates on how the plan is being progressed and any changes that may be required. Appendix B therefore provides the detail of the audit area to be reviewed and a proposed outline scope. Of the 47 items listed Appendix B, I just want to highlight that the 12 items from number 37 onwards identifies work that will be undertaken by internal audit, which will not necessarily provide an audit opinion. The other items in the plan will provide an opinion. Therefore, as recommended, the committee is recommended to consider and approve the draft internal audit strategy at Appendix A and the draft annual risk-based audit plan for 25-26 at Appendix B. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Joan, and very comprehensive document. Any questions? No questions. Any comments, anyone? Oh, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a quick question on the plan. I know in the report it talks about the list of audits have got a priority rating. I'm just thinking that might be useful for the committee to see in terms of what are the high priority audits and the number of days that are allocated against them. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Joan?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Obviously, behind the information that you've got here in the plan that we've produced today is a much longer list of all the audits within the audit universe or potential audits we could carry out. It's fair to say, obviously, we've got limited resources and limited number of days available to undertake our work and produce an opinion that Andrew will, or enough opinions that Andrew will be able to give an overall opinion at the end of the year. Therefore, it's fair to say that everything in front of you we would consider to be equally important that we try and cover during 25-26. So there is no sort of priority rating on the information that is provided with you today. It is our target to complete the plan is 80%. We overachieved that last year, and we managed to achieve 86%, I think it was, in Bridgend. And we also strive, obviously, to achieve 100%, but we know that wouldn't be probably, although we try to, that would be exceptional if we did manage to do that. But as far as going back to your question, I would say these are all equally important for us to try and cover based on all the risk assessment that we have done behind the scenes. I don't know if Andrew's got something to add.
No, that's lovely. Thank you. Okay with that, Andrew?
Sorry.
Oh, Andrew?
Sorry,
Watham.
Chair. Sorry, Chair. Didn't press my button quick enough, so apologies. So yeah, just to add to what Joan has said, really, in terms of the operational side of things, we do allocate a number of days to each audit, but it varies. It depends on our risk profile, which we consider to be operational. So that's kind of behind the scenes. The key is to make sure we got as much coverage as we possibly can across all service areas. And as Joan has already said, we've demonstrated we've done that for 24-25 by covering quite a large proportion of the audit plan, 86% in terms of opinion-related work. So hopefully that gives you enough assurance that we're on track and we're completing the plan as we set out.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, diolch, Chair. I did have some questions around capacity, but they've already been answered by Andrew and Joan. But one quick question on process. We mentioned 86% in the last financial year. Would ordinary then those that are missed at the bottom of the list coming to the end of the financial year, would they then carry forward to the following year's plan? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, they are included. There's 7 that you would see from Andrew's previous item that were either ongoing and not completed or not started, and those 7 are in this 25-26 plan.
Thank you for that, Joan. No one's indicated any questions. Any comments from anyone? I can't.
Chair, I've got one further question. Is just on
sorry,
the...
Andrew.
Okay, thanks. Joan, just on the carryover ones, I'm assuming they don't hit this plan just because they weren't delivered last year. They are still high priority audit. So I don't know if I'm phrasing this question the best, but I suppose I wouldn't want something carried over just because we didn't do it last year, when there might be something that's not on this list, but actually is probably more important to me. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, they were considered with everything else, and it was felt that they were all should have been carried forward. In the past, we don't always carry forward every item, and even during the year, sometimes some get sort of superseded for others because obviously, as you're aware, we've only got a finite number of staff, so or things change during the year. So yes, they were considered, and this year they were all considered to be carried forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. There aren't any other questions. Any comments, anyone? No comments. Okay, if we go to the recommendation then, we approve the draft internal audit strategy, Appendix A, and the draft annual risk-based audit plan for 25-26, Appendix B. Someone prepared to move, please?
Yes, I move.
Thank you, Martin. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second it as Councillor Richard Graham is out of the room.
Thank you, Colin. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the Regional Internal Audit Surface Charter 25-26. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is the annual charter which we bring to committee for approval. So for 25-26, the 24 charter has been reviewed and updated, and the intention is to obviously make you aware of how the internal audit team operates, the relationship it has with the officers of the organisation, the expectation officers can have of and expectations of the internal audit service, and how the certain officers within the organisation can support the internal audit team moving forward. Again, quite a lengthy document, Chair, so I won't go through it in detail, but it's quite a key document for Governance and Audit Committee because it demonstrates that there is appropriate governance in terms of the relationship with the internal audit team. We've taken on board the new global internal audit standards. So the major updates are in relation to removing the public sector internal audit standards reference and incorporating the new global internal audit standards. So it goes through in terms of the detail of that we will be compliant, that we need to be compliant. Anything that we feel as though we can't comply with the standards will need to be incorporated within the charter. And at this moment in time, I think I'm pretty comfortable we will be fully conforming with the new expectations and standards. The charter is split into following sections, which are purpose, authority and responsibility, independence and objectivity, proficiency and due professional care, and the quality assurance and improvement programme. We also need to make sure that we comply with SIPFA's notes and applications, so those have been incorporated in terms of the links added into the document. The annexes which have been included are in relation to domain 2, which is the ethics side of things, which is something just to make sure that members can see and are aware of in terms of the compliance we need to demonstrate for our own professional situation. And sorry, at the end then, Chair, I've incorporated the reference to the SIPFA application notes working in internal audits in the public sector in the UK, which refers to the Nolan principles. We've also incorporated some links to the global internal audit standards and the SIPFA documents as suggested. I'm picking up a point that was made in this committee last year. There's a second document included which shows the changes that have been made from 24-25. I've tried to colour code them because I did try and do track changes and it became quite a messy document. Yellow is where I've taken things out, blue is where I've added things in. So hopefully that makes it a little clearer for members to identify what changes have been made to enable you to approve the charter for 25-26. So if I could take members back to the recommendation, which is to review and approve the internal audit charter for 25-26. I'd be grateful. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And as I say, thank you very much for providing the track changed, if I call it, document, because I know members sort of raise issues as to what's been changed, where is it be changed when we just provide a final document. So thank you for providing that on this occasion. Okay, are there any questions? Colin, I think. Yep, Colin.
Thanks, Chair. It's more kind of general question, really, in terms of not so much the work of the team, but how the team, what kind of reception the team gets when it meets with relevant managers. Personally, and I may be wrong, but personally I've noticed on a few occasions that different departments measure their work and measure their achievements and performance in different ways. And I just wondered, from an audit perspective, first of all, is there a lack of consistency across the council in terms of when you meet with managers to look at policies and processes and expectations? And if there is a lack of consistency, then I would imagine that makes your work harder because you have to sometimes adjust your work to a different or differing set of expectations. And I wonder whether or not there is scope for awareness raising or training, if it exists, around this issue in terms of improving consistency across the council, people's expectations, understanding of the processes, what you expect in terms of the evidence provided, so that you don't have to go looking for it or asking for it. You know, I know you don't go much beyond the scope as you've identified on page 112. The scope is covers virtually everything really, but it doesn't really talk about, and you may not have to talk about performance and how people measure performance, because I've noticed at times that different officers have different understandings of what their expectations are, legislative expectations, policy expectations in the council, things like that. So I know it's a convoluted question, but I just wonder if you understand what I'm talking about. If not, I'll clarify a bit more, and whether or not you have an opinion on what I've just said. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Colin.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. That's a very, very difficult question to answer, because we don't audit the same things every year, and we audit different services or different departments in different services every year, because the plan is quite complex. The organisation itself is multifaceted and complex in its nature because of the different services it delivers. So what we try and do is have a consistent approach in terms of the audit. We do have the scope, so we do try and make sure that it's compliant with council policy, procedure, financial regulations, contract procedure rules, primarily, plus legislation if it's relevant. There's a perception of what internal audit is about, and sometimes that is negative. So we've worked hard as a team to move forward in terms of raising our profile positively. Joan and I now attend CMB, so we're meeting directors. We're getting our message across. I think that's, from my perspective, has been well received. I'm sure Cass might have a different view on that. But you know, we're getting to the top table, and we're raising our profile in a positive way. Hopefully that filters down and cascades down into then service managers. So in terms of when we go out and we do the audits, it is different across the board, but we have got a consistent approach, and we report on that. We're an independent part of the organisation, so we report good and bad. So that's something I've got to take on the chin. And I think when the team go out and they introduce themselves, they talk through the scope, the audit managers have got, the managers have got a better understanding of what we're about and what they expect, and that smooths the way in terms of the audit. In terms of the result of the audit, then verbal feedback is okay, and sometimes written feedback is harsher because it's in black and white, and people get a bit concerned about that. But we talk them through that. We give them an opportunity to comment in terms of the management action plan, so they can agree to implement the recommendation we're making. So in schools, for example, I mentioned already, we've got a control risk self-assessment. So we send that out to all schools who are not being audited in that particular year. They've got an understanding of what to expect from us when we do come and audit. What we don't do is that for the rest of the organisation. And what we probably haven't done very well in the last few years is to do some training to the rest of the organisation. So we'll certainly take that on board, and we'll try and develop that in future years. But from my perspective, the team approach is very consistent. And in terms of our checking compliance, that is consistent across the board. But it does vary from service to service.
Thank you for that, Andrew. There are no other questions. No comments? No? Okay, if we go to the recommendation then, that we approve the Regional Internal Audit Service Charter for 25-26 as attached to Appendix A to this report. Someone prepared to move, please?
Yes, I move.
Thank you, Martin. Can I have a seconder? Can I have a seconder?
I second.
Thank you very much, Colin. Anyone against? Nope. Thank you. I didn't know whether now is a convenient time just to have a 10-minute recess. I know some of the elected members need a little break now and again. So shall we have 10 minutes and back by 12:20? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I wasn't thinking of you, Colin.